Margaret, Maggie, Wilkinson had survived 3 children, 2 husbands, and 1 hip replacement. Now, at 72, she lived peacefully in Willow Creek Retirement Village, or at least she did until the Great Pickle Jar incident of 2025. It all started on a Tuesday morning, the most dangerous of days. According to Maggie, Tuesdays were when the cafeteria served what they proudly called chef's surprise, which usually meant a questionable casserole topped with suspicious cheese. Maggie had wisely skipped breakfast and decided instead to spend her morning doing something far more productive, plotting a heist. It wasn't gold, jewels, or secrets Maggie was after. No, it was the legendary gigantic pickle jar perched atop the highest shelf in the community pantry, a jar said to contain the crispiest, most mouth-watering homemade dill pickles ever created. Rumor had it that Mrs. Langford, the village's oldest resident at 94 years old, had canned them herself during the Eisenhower administration and had since deemed them too valuable for casual consumption. The jar was guarded by a flimsy sign, for special occasions only. But Maggie thought every day was a special occasion when you were north of 70. She needed a team. First, there was Frank Delaney, former high school gym teacher and self-proclaimed strategic thinker, though most of his strategies revolved around napping or sneaking extra pudding cups. Next came Rita Vasquez, a retired lawyer with a mischievous glint in her eye and arthritis in both knees. She knew all about legal loopholes, which Maggie figured could come in handy if they were caught. Finally, they recruited George Hensley, who was mostly there because he had the only walker in Willow Creek equipped with a basket, perfect for transporting heavy jars. The team assembled secretly in Maggie's unit, gathering around her crocheted tea cozy like it was a battle map. "All right," Maggie began, tapping a spoon against her teacup. "Mission Pickle Pop is a go. Operation parameters, stealth, speed, and plausible deniability." Frank nodded solemnly. Rita adjusted her bifocals. George fell asleep for a minute but woke up just in time for the important part. "Questions?" Maggie asked. Frank raised a hand. "Are we allowed to taste test once we secure the target?" "Absolutely," Maggie said. "We're freedom fighters, not monsters." The plan. 1. Diversion. Frank would create a medical emergency during bingo hour. 2. Extraction. While attention was diverted, Maggie and Rita would retrieve the jar. 3. Transportation. George, disguised as an innocent old man with nowhere to be, would whisk the jar to safety in his walker basket. It was foolproof. Mostly. Blank. Blank. The big day. At precisely 2 p.m., Frank threw himself dramatically across the bingo table, sending lettered balls flying. "My hip," he cried. "My hip's gone rogue." The room erupted into chaos. Staff members rushed over. One particularly enthusiastic nurse attempted to construct a makeshift stretcher out of 2 pool noodles and a tablecloth. Meanwhile, Maggie and Rita, moving faster than they had since the Nixon administration, hustled toward the pantry. "Keep your head down," Rita hissed. "I'd keep everything down if I could." Maggie grunted, her knees crackling like popcorn. Reaching the pantry, they stared up at the pickle jar, gleaming under the fluorescent lights like a holy grail. Unfortunately, it was on the top shelf, a cruel 6 feet above ground. Maggie squinted. "Do we have a step ladder?" "Do I look like a step ladder?" Rita snapped. "You're taller. Boost me." Maggie sighed and interlaced her fingers into a makeshift foothold. Rita, whose athleticism had peaked during a 1962 tap dancing recital, gamely stepped into Maggie's hands. "Up," Rita barked. Maggie heaved. There was a terrible cracking noise, possibly Maggie's back, but somehow Rita scrambled up and grabbed the pickle jar. Victory. Except, as Rita triumphantly raised the jar, she lost her balance and teetered. "Catch it," she screamed. Maggie lunged. The jar wobbled. Time seemed to slow. George, appearing at exactly the wrong moment, shuffled by with his walker. Without thinking, Maggie guided the jar toward him like a volleyball serve. It landed squarely in the walker's basket with a satisfying clunk. George blinked. "Is this the thing?" he asked. "Yes. Now move it, soldier," Maggie barked. George began a slow but determined shuffle toward Maggie's apartment. Meanwhile, back in the bingo room, Frank was being plied with orange jello and back pats. "Feeling better now?" the nurse asked suspiciously. "Oh yes," Frank said, sitting up with suspicious ease. "Miraculous recovery. Must have been a bingo cramp. Blank. Blank. The pickle party. Safely ensconced in Maggie's apartment. The gang admired their prize. The pickles, bathed in golden brine, floated serenely like tiny green submarines. Rita produced a jar opener from her purse, because of course she did, and after a short struggle that involved a lot of grunting and mild profanity, the jar popped open. They each speared a pickle with cocktail toothpicks Maggie had left over from a 1978 bridge night. The taste? Sublime. Tangy. Crunchy. Just the right amount of garlic. It was like biting into history itself. The group sighed in collective happiness. I think my cholesterol just went down, George said dreamily. They spent the afternoon munching pickles, reminiscing about their youth, and laughing until their sides ached. Rita revealed she'd once skinny dipped at Woodstock. Frank confessed he'd been banned from coaching after teaching teenagers how to fake injuries. George, who had never married, confessed he once proposed to a waitress at a pancake house after too much cough syrup. Maggie laughed until tears ran down her face. It was the best day she could remember having in years. Blank. Blank. The aftermath. Of course, no great caper stays secret forever. 2 days later, at the monthly resident meeting, Mrs. Langford shuffled up to the podium, clutching her walker with the grim determination of someone about to give a Supreme Court ruling. We had an incident, she announced. An incident involving the community pantry, and my personal pickle reserves. The room grew tense. Maggie felt a bead of sweat roll down her back. Mrs. Langford narrowed her eyes. I know who did it. Several residents gasped. Someone dropped a knitting needle. And I have just one thing to say. She paused dramatically. Next time, invite me. The room burst into applause. Mrs. Langford smiled, a mischievous little smile that made her look 50 years younger, and added, I still have a jar of pickled beets hidden behind the bran cereal. You kids interested? Maggie, Frank, Rita, and George exchanged looks. Another mission? Absolutely. Blank. Conclusion. In the end, the Great Pickle Jar Heist became something of a legend at Willow Creek. A symbol, not of theft, but of life, messy, hilarious, slightly salty life. A reminder that you were never too old for a little adventure. A little rebellion, and a lot of laughter. And as for Maggie, she kept a jar of pickles on her kitchen counter, right next to a framed photo of her crew, all raising their speared pickles in a toast to friendship, freedom, and fermented vegetables. Because every day was a special occasion, if you made it one.